the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. We are meeting in hybrid format, both here in the trailer, with commissioners, Marks, Buscarin, Flanzer, and Gasparo present, and Commissioner Topham is online. Ms. Topham, can you hear us?
And
Confirmed. Thank you. So, we are meeting is being both audio and video recorded. Please be sure to mute your microphone when not speaking if you're online. And please to be sure that all conversation goes through the chair. And are there any questions or concerns with the agenda? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. Are there any questions or concerns with the March 25th or April 8th draft minutes that were included with the pack? Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted by unanimous consent. I would entertain a motion to ratify the warrants of April 16th and May 7th. Is there such a motion? So moved. Is there a second?
second,
Motion been made and second. Discussion. Any questions or discussion on the warrants? Hearing none. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
aye.
Lancer.
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin.
Aye.
Mr. Marks.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That'll lead us to public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. We don't have any public here in the room. How about online?
Nothing.
So we will move on to pending leases and contracts set forth on Exhibit 1. That was published with the agenda, and we will turn it over to Nancy Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, going right down the list, we have finally received the non-signatory airline agreements for both United Airlines and Delta Airlines. Everything looks to be in place there for the upcoming season. I received those with no comment. The next one down the list is Jet East Corporation, who handle aircraft maintenance. We're looking to do another pretty much an annual business fee with them as well for their operating agreement at the airport for this summer. Continuing moving down, Harbor Fuel Oil Corporation is a sublease with Toscana Corporation. And that sublease will be set to expire December 31st of 2026. All right, continuing on. The next two contracts are with United Ag and Turf. We actually had additional monies left over from the capital warrant for these that we would like to use. So we are looking to procure a Z-Track mower as well as a Gator utility vehicle for general maintenance at the airport for this coming year, as the other two are pretty much in the dirt, no pun intended. So definitely looking to utilize the money that we have there and upgrade the equipment that's much needed for the airport. Moving on, the next contract is with P&M Reese Trucking Inc. They handle the rubbish removal service for the airport. Their contract is set to expire. So that is looking to do a new 3-year contract with them with a not to exceed of $75,000. And then the last two items on here are for both McFarland Johnson. They are new, there were 2 task orders that were set to expire. So we are basically doing 2 new task orders for those ones that were set to expire, new 3-year task orders for both of those. And that's all that I have at this time. So, Mr. Chair, I do ask for your approval on these items, as they're much needed for the airport to continue operating as we need to.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Does anybody have any questions, concerns with any of the items just reviewed? We entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
All items on Exhibit 1. Motion would be to approve all items on Exhibit 1. And is there a second?
Contract on the exhibit.
Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Blazer?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you all. And that will move us on to pending matters. Mr. Smith brings us to the South Apron. Please.
Perfect. Yeah, South Apron ramp expansion update that we have. Training was provided to both my assistant airport manager as well as superintendent of operations, and it provided a high-level detailed overview of noise monitoring software, how to manipulate it, and basically obtain that live data that comes with the programming. It does provide the real-time noise monitoring as what we were looking for, which is great. I plan to sit down with the superintendent sometime when I have time in my schedules for them to train me so I can get a better understanding of how to use it. And yeah, like I said, we're just really excited to be able to finally utilize this noise monitoring for this upcoming season, as it'll be our first true season using it, and to just see how the noise happens on the ramp this summer, and just go from there. So that's what I have for the South Ramp extension. Any questions? Any update? Yeah, please.
Just like the noise monitoring, it was to give you like decibel readings of what's going on out
Correct.
there and the
From what I've been
locations
told.
of where they are. Kind
It's
of.
the dBA or the decibel.
Decibel
Yeah.
readings, a lot of other readings that we learn on how to understand and digest. And then a live view as well. And then it records for, I think, 24 hours straight, so that we can go in and have a noise complaint, we can go in and see those entries. And then be able to hopefully match them up with some security footage and figure out.
Does it have like thresholds on it or anything?
Yeah,
So get
you
the
can
noise?
set thresholds and triggering a different, where it'll trigger different recordings.
Okay,
And I think it as well. You can set all that, and it's just
so
something.
you could set it up so if it exceed our like our town things that would.
Right.
You record, you'd see what it was and so.
Correct. Yeah, and we're still
Learning, yeah. I get it.
learning this because there's a lot to it.
Sure.
and You need like a master's degree to understand it. We're gonna do our best.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Perfect. All right. No other questions? Moving on.
Just on that one, I think one of the ideas would be that it will help us to, there's both the identification of single, extremely out of the ordinary loud events, if you would, but also length of runtime, right? So if you've got a single operator for it's, then you'd be able, without actually having to have boots on the ground, be able to know that, there was a noise of some higher than normal threshold that happened to have run for some extended period of time and start to work towards, again, starting off hopefully with a friendly approach. You could then say to that person, I'd just like you to know you stayed running time that created the emissions, the noise, and which please not do kind of approach, I think, and then see how that all progresses as part of the overall a real tool, I think, in the ramp management plan that the commission had committed to the community. So, thank you.
All right. Moving down the list. Next one is the PFAS investigation update. This past or last week, Thursday, the airport with its LSP Weston Solutions was able to sit down with Mass DEP to discuss and get a little bit more context of the audit that was provided or that was done with the airport. And in that, there was some great response that was given to us and some better clarity to that letter. So Weston informed Mass DEP that the airport tests PFAS samples using the EPA method 1633, and Mass DEP was actually very pleased with this method of its approach, as it yields more analytes, and so it's more susceptible to that chemical fingerprinting of exactly which PFAS chemical it is that's in those purposes. And so Mass DEP likes using that method, and the airport's been on top of that, utilizing that. So that was a big positive. Mass DEP was under the impression that all wells had only been sampled once around in the boundary area, when in fact there had actually been a lot of wells that had been sampled multiple times. So they did not know that. However, they have asked for us to do the ones that we only sampled once. They asked us to go back and continue sampling those other wells, as it's been about 4 years since many of those have been last sampled. So we are going to take the initiative to do such a thing and keep testing those to get greater data. The airport has taken a conservative approach and has hooked up the homes up on the boundary line, but we asked the DEP for more of a solid rationale as to that justification of that boundary. And unfortunately, they really didn't give us an answer that was viable, kind of beat around that question. So we're hoping to gain more context and clarity on their end of what's that justification? Like where should that boundary truly delineate and end? So hopefully get more from them on that. They also acknowledge that the collaboration and the engagement between Mass DEP and the airport has been extremely positive and excellent and very beneficial, which is to be praised by the airport team, by the LSP. And then basically they stated that the audit letter was simply a communication tool. And Mass DEP would like to continue working with the airport to satisfactorily complete the environmental work that's being done. Weston Solutions is currently drafting a response to the audit and to be sent within the next 1 to 2 week time frame. So we're waiting for them to finalize that, but definitely good progress there. Also, what came about of that was Statue Park looks to have new monitoring wells installed to better delineate that contamination boundary, as there was a gray area there. And so we're looking to do that. In addition to the last monthly report, 6 homes have received bottled water in last month. However, within the last week, 3 of those homes have been fully connected to municipal water. One of the homeowners has asked for continued bottled water at this time, as she still feels a little uncertain. And I have allowed that to at least continue to provide her bottled water through the summer, just to ease of mind. But she is definitely on municipal water now. And the next drinking water sampling is planned for May 21st, which also includes the fuel farm treatment system. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
This audit, did they come down to the island? Did they meet with Weston? I mean, what are they doing to audit our PFAS work here?
So the audit was, from what I was told, that they came down, they sampled the soil wells.
They did samples themselves? DEP did?
We have Cameron,
Yeah.
Mr. Smith.
Okay, yes, please, Cameron.
I'd be shocked to hear that was true.
Hi, everyone. That's actually not true. They did not take samples themselves, but they were out here. They spent a full day with myself, with Mr. Carberg, and with Jim Sookup from Weston. And we spent the day doing a site tour of the airport. We went around to all of the spots discussed in the phase 2 report, which was the report being audited. We took them to the gas station. We took them to Statue Park. We drove around some of the neighborhoods in question, and we spent close to 3 or 4 hours in the airport administrative building, going through all of the maps and reporting studies that we had done, all of the samples that we had completed, and had what I believed and still do believe to be a really fruitful conversation in terms of getting on the same page of what had happened, what contamination still existed, and how we were remediating it. I think that there was, following this meeting, some miscommunication or lack of communication, but up until that point, I feel very confident and healthy in our process there. I think that they had a good visit out to the site, and we adequately demonstrated all that we've done and committed to resolving the issue of PFAS contamination. But it was a full day site visit. They did not take samples themselves, but we went through everything that we had accomplished independently.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron.
Anything else on that?
That's it. That's all I have for that.
Okay. Ms. Woods, anything else?
No, Mr. Smith did a great job of the PFAS
Thank
update this week. It's a nice change not having to do that.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the crew quarters project. Based on the project value, the project is at approximately 91% complete. The project has progressed approximately 6% this past month. Asphalt for the parking has finally been laid. Shingling is pretty much done. The stairs are being completed now. Concrete flat work is scheduled for next week. There looks to be a change order to the sidewalk length to accommodate for the additional 1 foot that the EV charging stations are going at right there at the parking spots. So I'm working with the OPM on that to see what additional cost that could be, if there is any. So that's in the books right now that we're working on. The extent of landscaping scope includes a stabilization mix, which they will do here shortly. And the project is on target for its completed scheduled date and the potential move-ins this August. I do believe that the inspection for this dorm is looking to be within the next couple of weeks, if not the end of this month, early next month. So things are progressing nicely there when it comes to that construction of the crew quarters. I took Madison, our new environmental coordinator, there yesterday, and it actually looks like a home. So it's looking really, really good. very pleased to see that. I do know that the trailer that's there is slated to be removed at the end of either this week or next week. So I guess it'll actually look more like a dorm in a building on its own. FF&E, we will have a discussion with the selected team this coming Friday. Some of the quotes that we've received seem to be a little high in terms of procurement standards. So I definitely want to make sure that we're keeping the standards there, but also seeing what we can do on our end to procure the items for the dormitories right now. And then the closeout package for this dorm, we have asked for 2 hard copies as well as 2 digital copies that will be given to our maintenance team. And then from there, I'm actually planning on meeting with the maintenance superintendent, I think Thursday this week, to begin creating a formal maintenance program for the dormitories so that we will be handling the maintenance moving forward, of course, from the airport's perspective. And I think that is all that I have for the crew quarters project. Any questions?
Questions? I think it would be nice, once it's, close to ready, but before actually move in, whether we actually did a walk as a commission, or one-on-one with you, but I think all of us should, have a look at this. It's a big project for us, and really make sure, if we see anything, questions. The EV charging stations were something I sort of wasn't quite, not sure how I didn't see that in the review of things. But are those going to be, so it just raises additional management. We don't have to get all into it now, but that you can't have people coming from other places, and then, are those metered and charged for, is it free? If that's the case, people are, coming from other places, you're gonna have to manage those. Yeah. So just a thought, and I sort of hadn't realized that probably wouldn't.
It could be like what the town uses, right?
It could be.
I don't know.
the
It'd be
details.
interesting to know what it is.
Yeah.
Because the ones that they use, you swipe your credit card and it's all.
Yeah, but even still, I think we'd want to be careful that a neighboring, they have to be residents only. I don't think you want to have
Just
people from general public coming in to where it's our dorm. And it's the parking spaces that are there for, if a residence has, anyway, I think it's just something to be cognizant of, because those kind of things, if it's the shortest walk for somebody that has one of those cars, then that's where they're gonna use it. I mean, there's a, human nature side of that, so
I think we should have just anyone that's on our property in there should have a parking sticker,
something, right? Yeah.
You're not even allowed to park there unless you're a sticker or
Yeah.
you're visiting one thing.
That's fine, but
Right.
something, I just think that that becomes an attraction. Someone else
Yeah.
wouldn't have wanted to go in there.
Right.
The neighborhood right next door
That's
is pretty big.
what I have in mind,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
It's a short walk.
you said 2
There's
stations?
2 stations. There's one that's supposed to straddle a handicap spot. Something that one kind of might speak for itself if you're abiding by the law. And then the other one is a non-handicap spot.
How likely is it that we're gonna have people staying in the dorm who are gonna be able to afford $80,000?
They're not that, no, I
They're
think,
not that-
no, they're not that great. I mean, I
You
think,
can buy one of those Beamers that I drive around, they're not expensive.
yeah, I
Okay.
think my truck,
A little tiny guy.
there's a lot of,
They're perfect.
their options are coming along, so, I'm not opposed to it. I just think that it creates, again, I think the same thing. If someone's in that neighborhood next door has one of these, all of a sudden someone just put one next door, you're like, great,
Freebie, yeah, it's a
Or
freebie.
whether it's
Yeah.
free, even if it's not a freebie,
Yeah.
the point becomes, if it's part of our project and it's parking for those folks, it's really got to make sure that, because then someone that is a resident isn't able to use that. So small thing, but these are the things, there's going to be learning curve and, some things like that, but that one kind of jumped out at me when you mentioned it. So,
If you don't mind me interjecting to strengthen that point, we're looking, and this is further in the discussion, to upgrade some airport operations vehicles. And the state, correct me if I'm wrong, Preston, but the state is very gung-ho on transitioning all vehicles to electric. And that just gives us an additional charging station for those vehicles if needs be.
If we want to
Operational.
receive any ASMP.
Correct. That's correct. If we were to receive the through ASMP, so it just strengthens that, gives us an additional charging unit.
right, and I mean, back to the overall crew quarters, I think, as we head into the home stretch, similar to what was suggested, whether it's a stick or whether there's some kind of sign that it's residents only. Again, parking becomes a premium and around here, and, you're gonna have to have some controls on that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
One more thing I do want to add is that there has been a change in the project manager and OPM. Our current project manager is no longer with CHA. We have transitioned to a new individual at CHA to continue working with the dormitory. And so that change was just made public today to us. So I will be continuing working with their new OPM, and I'm looking forward.
yeah, thanks, Thomas.
All right, moving on to terminal optimization. The geothermal, we had a good, robust discussion this last week with the maintenance superintendent. And the consensus is that the geothermal appears to be working fine within the terminal. It definitely needs basic maintenance and cleaning of the pipes overall, but overall, it seems to be pretty healthy. Pump and treatment of the water use wells is still a viable option, but there definitely needs to be more study into that loss of resistance and functionality across the whole system that we need to really look into for there. But as of right now, it really is working to its best extent that I could. But to kind of help with the loss of air and heat within the building, maintenance provided the dimensions of the roller doors for us to procure those plastic door flaps that you see, kind of those refrigerated door flaps to reduce that loss of wind through the terminal. And we will hopefully be procuring some of those here soon within the week, and then hopefully have those installed this coming season. We also came to a consensus to look at putting the TSA baggage makeup area in the basement to create an extension of that hold room area. Really, the terminal is underutilized, and we could definitely utilize the space that's already there now at less cost. And so that is an option that we are looking at. Should we be able to receive this ATP grant that we're looking at, potentially notice of financial option usually hits about July of this year. So we're just waiting to kind of hear on that. I also am meeting with AeroCloud Systems next week on Thursday to discuss more on the flight information display and the common use kiosks. I do think that there's a better space for us to move the kiosks that are there now farther down to where the departure area is, where Cape Air utilizes right now. Is that space is already underutilized, and open up more of that space in front of TSA to create a better queuing line as it can get bottled up in the summer. I have not seen that yet, and I've been told it's pretty bad, so we will see how that goes this summer. So yeah, more to come there on the FIDs and the kiosks, but I definitely think it is good looking into for the airport to handle that. So any questions on the terminal optimization? Good. All right. Last one is the high mast lights. So this project was initially discussed with Mass DOT as a CIP, as a capital improvement project. Initially, it was slated for just 10 lights. But after that meeting, there was a scoping meeting with the FAA, and that project ballooned up to 20 lights because the FAA was willing to pay for the additional lights. And Mass DOT was willing to pay for those lights, the fixtures that were not covered by the FAA. And so we had an initial cost of roughly $700,000 for that was presented to the capital committee for that funding. However, now with the new additional cost, it's ballooned up to 1.5 million. And the airport is working with the town to request the home rule petition to be able to have that covered through Capcom, and we're just awaiting the town's response for that. The bids were sent out and were due April 23rd, and we've received one bid for that project. So that's all that I have for the message. Did I explain that properly? You might know a little better.
Since the bid came almost double than what we have appropriated at town meeting for this capital article. And the second reason for that is that originally when this request was put in front of Capcom, it was for only 10 lights. And the FAA came back and said that they actually would pay for 20. I'm not really sure where the connection and what, how it happened, but the bid was put out for 20. So that's why it's more than double than the preparation at town meeting. So what we need to do, in order, town to sign the contract is to increase that article to $1.5 million. And we can do it two ways. We can either use the home rule petition, which is a bylaw in the town code, and we're just gonna have to go to select board to do that. Or we can do a supplemental request for funding at special town meeting, which I guess it's definitely going to happen. I don't know if it's gonna be now in the summer or it's gonna be in fall. So we're kind of waiting on direction from the finance director, which way he wants us to do. He prefers if we do a additional request and do it through Capcom. That means supplemental at a special town meeting, so we don't jump over capital program committee. But again, that's all depends from the timing, and I think we're kind of just waiting now to see what happens at town election and see the ballot question will pass for anything, and they decide to do a special town meeting now in the summer and take her out from there.
Thank you. So, this is the first I've heard of a summer special town meeting. I know that it was, scheduled for September, I believe. I don't know what, this is a result of, so we can see how that goes. The question I have is, do we believe that there's grant funding in this fiscal year from the FAA that would run out at the end of September that we would be at risk of losing if we didn't? That was my understanding, right? Was that we were in line
Yes.
with that funding. So, I think that we should have this back on our agenda for next month. With perhaps some more information regarding, grants and what's happening there. And, if we were to go to, I don't know what, I'd like to say, it was first I've heard of a summer town meeting. I've never seen such a thing. I can't imagine that, that's gonna be highly, right. And if it was a fall special town meeting, I believe we would be too late for the grant. So the home rule petition was for exactly this type of situation, where we would lose funds because of grant application and FAA timing. I think that it is a project that shouldn't really be controversial. The replacement of the lights is to bring them, I don't know if they'll be fully compliant, but working, improvements towards dark sky initiative or hopefully compliant. And then the things we talked about for quite some time, it's gonna drop the poles by 10 feet, I believe. It's going to get better shut off, and it's all positive, I think, from a community perspective, as well as accomplishing the same objective on the ramp of safe usage. And so I don't think that and if the overall concern is Capcom, we might be able, with the finance director, we might be able to handle that in some other manner that maybe, whether it's I don't know, we'll see, but I wouldn't take that off the table. I would still want to work with them, but I wouldn't want to lose the opportunity in this cycle for $1.5 million for a project that's completely bid, and then we can get checked off of our list. So that's my thought on that. So if we could please see how it goes in the next month. Yeah.
So just a quick question, pardon my ignorance. So we have to go to the town, get the money to pay for the whole thing, and then we get paid back once we do the work? Is that how this works? I'm
What
just
we have to
curious
do,
why.
and I'll
sounded like it was all
defer to
funded and now-
Brianna, but typically the way it works is we need borrowing authorization for the full amount of the projects that we proceed with, even if we're gonna get a grant. Because if the grant doesn't come through for whatever reason, then we have to borrow the money. So in order for the finance director to sign, and please correct me if I missed a piece of this.
Perfect.
If in order for the finance director to essentially sign off on the contracts, there has to have been an authorization, and the authorizations come basically through town meeting. However, 2 years ago, we went through this whole move petition process that provides an alternate process to town meeting, including the select board and the finance committee for certain grants that they essentially, that would get us that authorization so that basically the finance director could sign off on it. But ultimately, it's that we need the borrowing authority for any project that we're gonna go forward with in case the grant doesn't come through. Thanks. Okay, anybody have any other questions? And we'll move on to town meeting.
That town meeting was interesting to say the least, because it was my first time going to town meeting, so definitely eye-opening. But the articles that we presented were all unanimously approved for fiscal year 27. Am I right to say that?
26.
26, thank you. Sorry, I apologize. One year ahead, right? So yeah, like I said, there were some questions that some members of the public had regarding just the overall number in cost of the projects. However, we were able to let them know that, the majority of our projects are 90%, 95% federally funded. So yeah, just because the number looks up that they see up there, they're thinking it's coming out of their own taxpayers' dollars. It's not. It's coming federally, and so we were able to ease those minds to just remind them that these are federally funded projects.
Well, Arthur stood up. And
Arthur did,
Yeah.
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 We'll
He
give
did a
him
great
A+,
job.
Yeah.
Arthur did.
Someone might have urged me.
Yeah. Somebody had to stand up. You're the senior man.
So anyway, I do hope that I conveyed to the public, that even if they are not, some of the funds that we use, taxpayer funds, it's still public money, however it's generated. And we take it very seriously as a commission, and that you do vet the projects and the spending, and that it is important. There's no slush funds here. It's, we are serving the general public and the aviation community, and that's our mission. And it's expensive. And the PFAS side of things is another piece of it that is difficult. And hopefully in the long run, they've said at town meeting, the airport may be successful in recouping some of those costs from the actual, generators of those materials.
No, you did a good job.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
But we have a public audience here too, so just, reiterate that. And the other, if I may, on town meeting was Article 72, I believe it was, I'm pretty sure, was the so-called rental car bylaw change, and the finance committee. It was a select board article. The finance committee had recommended it to be deferred for further study, and that article was not called. So essentially, I don't want to say killed, but it's back to see what the finance committee, the select board can come up with. I know the licensing agent for the town is working on that. And then, it leaves us, I think, in a standby position before we can enter into any kind of contracts with the car sharing company until we're not in conflict with town bylaw. So just something to keep an eye on. But there was no discussion on it. And so no involvement from the airport. Perfect. Third quarter report, please, which is in our packets.
It is in the packet, yeah. So I'm just going to hit the highlights of the report for this last quarter. So third quarter airport revenue collected was $8,184,640, which represented a decrease of $2,326,120, or roughly 22%, compared to the same quarter in the previous fiscal year. Main driver behind this quarter-over-quarter decrease was a decline in fuel sales revenue. The fuel revolver had the spending limit of $6 million in the current fiscal year, but had a retroactive increase to $8.8 million spending limit for the previous year. And so resetting the fuel revolver in Q4 will be necessary to ensure the sufficient funds are available to purchase fuel this year. And by resetting the fuel revolver spending limit, revenue will increase accordingly. And in this past February, the airport committee voted to increase the fuel revolver to 8.5 million. And that was just approved in finance committee prior to this meeting, where we will go to the select board tomorrow for their final approval. If I'm correct to say that. Overall, looking at total fuel sales, revolver and operating year to date, revenue from fuel sales was up $1,103,008, an increase in 9% over the same period last year. Fee income and rental income were up $66,353, or roughly 50%, and $63,743, which is an increase in 8%, respectively. Interest on investments increased to $151,498, or roughly 51% compared to Q3 of fiscal year 24. And vehicle revenue, that includes parking lot fees, parking tickets, and taxi permits, was up as well at $15,888, or roughly 35% increase. So total revenue, including other financing resources, reached 124% of the annual budgeted amount for the 9-month period. Moving on to airport expenses, operating expenses excluding debt services ended the quarter at $2,578,902, which is an increase of $708,019, or 38% over the Q3 in fiscal year 2024. Excluding this repayment, operating expenses without debt service were up only 15%. The increase was primarily due to the repayment to the town, which was made in the Q4 last fiscal year, but occurred in the Q3 of this fiscal year. Salaries and Medicare were up $135,269 and $1,972 respectively due to the cost of living adjustments and the departure of a few long tenured employees. And administrative expenses, which include utilities and credit card fees, decreased $32,739, or roughly 9% compared to Q3 of last fiscal year. Fixed-based operation expenses decreased by $3,702, or roughly 6%. Repairs and maintenance were up $9,851, or roughly 6%. The increase is driven by investment in and repairs to the fuel farm. And debt service interest rose by $343,080, or $80. It's $343,080 attributed to the short-term bond anticipation note for the South Apron project, and this increase was driven by both higher interest rates and the size of the project. Operating expenses, including debt service, finished the 9-month period at 49% compared to the same period last year and amounted to 70%, 4% of the annual budget allocated. So, any questions on that? All right, moving on to the fiscal year 27 capital projects request. We met with McFarland Johnson just to ensure that we had all the proper capital projects on the list for FY27. I can go down the list real quick. There is one AIP grant on there. It's the continuing environmental permit monitoring for Taxiway Golf in the South Apron for fiscal years 27 through 29. That's a $350,000 total federal grant with a $17,500 match that the airport would be required to spend.
Could I stop
Yes,
you on that
please,
one?
please, please, yeah.
Ms. Woods, are you still with us?
I am, yes.
Is that environmental permitting monitoring for taxiway G in this apron required as a condition of already issued permits?
I believe that it is a part of the permit for mitigation awareness, and Brett can speak more to that. I'm happy to invite him to the next commission meeting if you'd like, but we need to maintain standards with natural heritage, and I do believe that that is one of the requirements.
Okay, you don't need to invite him, but perhaps if we could have an answer, I would like to understand the extent to which that is all mandated monitoring at, basically $100,000 a year to a sub-consultant. First, we also have, in-house. I know we must remain in compliance, but if for some way we didn't get that entitlement, those funds, and we had to pay for that, is this something that, that we could do? I'm not gonna get off this list, but I would really like to understand. It's the only one that we have listed for 27 from the federal program. So I think it's important that we know the details of that, please.
Okay, I can look into that and have that for you for next month, but I do believe it is one of the requirements that was posited to us from Natural Heritage. But I will get an answer for you and report back next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one on the list is the ARF building rehabilitation door replacement and second floor flooring replacement with the estimated cost of $160,000. Third one on the list is IT and associated equipment upgrades with a request of $50,000. The next one is terminal and FBO exterior painting. We are still trying to. We didn't get a quote on that, did we? Or did we?
No,
It's going to be in-house.
I think we have to decide, all these requests are gonna be put in front of Capcom for consideration, and between now and when we have to submit, we have to decide if we actually want to move forward and do it as a capital article and hire someone to do it, or we can find a way and do it internally with our maintenance team and just buy the paint.
Okay, that's correct. That's right. All right, moving on, the employee housing, this would be for phase, I want to say it's called 3, excuse me. But for the townhouse to continue building employee housing. I did receive an estimated quote from CHA. Here it shows that roughly 6 million. The estimated quote is $6,080,000. So it's within that ballpark. Any questions on that?
Yeah, we got to talk about this one because this is what Manager Carberg and I went through more than a dozen hours of meetings with the Capcom on this exact same issue at this exact same cost. This is, they weren't completely wrong. They're telling us it's $6 million. This is for one townhouse. That's $1 million a bedroom. And they're saying, we're not going to get their support again. So, unless there's some kind of, what plans are they using to come up?
But hold on,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more to it than that. You could have put all the infrastructure in there, the sewer, all, right?
We already did.
So that was, and
That's not in this. This is
Okay.
on top of, that's
Okay.
sort of what I'm saying, right? Is
I
that
apologize.
No,
I
you
was under the
apologize.
impression that that was all part of it.
that was part of the
Just how they-
dorm. That's why the dorm was so expensive because we stubbed
Okay.
in and we got the
Okay.
sewer up Nobody
sorry.
Farm Road. No, don't apologize.
Yeah.
It's real. This is, but this is the detail that we spent so much time to get into. And, our only chance of, getting this built is, they're going to say the same thing. Why don't you just you can go buy a duplex townhouse for half of that.
No, you.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. And like, when, we're saying, yeah, we're using our land brand new and it is the construction cost, but we can't go I'm not gonna go through that same ringer.
Yeah, I
And,
agree.
and be out there where we're saying it's just what it costs.
I think,
And we need the design, that was what we were supposed to do, I think we're going to do was the last time when this $6 million number came up, what happened was it was a bit of a rush. And they just packaged up the same stuff from the dorm and tried to scale or put it in. I don't see why it's so difficult to get a cookie cutter duplex. I don't want to mention any particular modular company names, but there's a few that are, piling them out here. And then price that, if we want to and try to get a number and, so you worked with CHA, but I don't see how we can go back in at $1 million a bedroom.
not with all the infrastructure in place, I totally agree.
Right, I mean, there's another little stub to add on,
Yeah,
but it's
that's
basically
not-
connections.
Yeah, they're
That's
already,
not-
it's in the road, it's done.
Yeah, it's in the
Stub
parking
down the
lot, you're gonna make the parking lot another 80 feet longer, you're gonna, you're talking less than like 100 feet of pipe of. Not, so, when is this, due for, submission to the next cycle?
We still haven't received instructions from the finance department, but Capcom usually starts meeting in July, so I would assume that they would do it now. The town meeting is over. They
Yeah.
will probably do it, let us know, and will be due sometime in June, probably mid of June.
Okay, maybe we could work on this for our next meeting. Please don't send this to them and have this start to take on a life where they think that the
Oh.
airport is proposed.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a
Even as a
lot,
placeholder. I know that people start to say, well, this is our draft,
yeah,
but I think we have to work on this a little bit. I mean, perhaps another approach. I thought that with the work we had done, you know, and I know this is still a lot, but I thought we were thinking it might have been closer to 4.5, like when we had tried to refine it to get through Capcom at the end.
Yeah.
That's still an awfully lot, but
And let me apologize for the
Yeah.
record, the actual physical construction cost was estimated at 4.8, but the OPM cost was 1.2 million on top of that, which is roughly 20% of the project. In my experience, even coming from Grand Canyon, is administrative costs should not be any more than really 10%. And so that seems extremely high to me personally.
I don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
Why do we need this project? And we've got 8 bedrooms coming on.
well, if I may, the 8 bedrooms are really to replace the seasonals that are living in the Thompson house, which is a house that would, you know, have to winterize every year, is from, you know, a half a decade plus old, right? So those dorm rooms are going to be, you know, filled. I think part of it is to look at, you know, year round, longer term, not, you know, to have some stability, to have some housing option as may be needed. Right now, we really don't, you know, while we have that dorm, we start putting year-round people in with it, we're gonna keep limping along on the Thompson house and, you know, which might, we have some, gives us some flexibility, but again, I think overall, if we were to have, you know, a duplex, it would provide greater flexibility for the manager and hiring of, I will never have, I think, you know, I'm not proposing in any way this big giant housing production plan, but I think a few units would, you know, the seasonal is kind of one whole piece of things, right? So we're taking care of that. But that's just my thought was that, you know, we got really hammered on these costs when you can go out and buy something for less. So I think it's something we're gonna have to think about. If we can't somehow get this down, I would say all in, and again, I'm shooting from the hip a little bit, but you know, 4.5, something like that. Even that's high, but at least it would maybe, you know, go for, you know, if it's just not gonna happen, I just don't think that the commission, I don't know how you all feel, but I couldn't go in there at this number and then say, this is just what it costs. I mean, not when there's other alternatives.
Well,
Well,
this is for, I'm sorry, fixing the Thompson house. I mean,
So that'd be a
$4
nuts.
million. I mean, we think that,
Yeah, that's the next thing, but we can't do that till it's actually empty.
right.
And then, which won't be till through this season, so we can have that discussion going in, and that's included in. The 2028, also no number there, so that was the progression that I think we had in mind. Each year, we did the dorm, next year do the duplex, following year, take care of that house. Gets us the, you know, some units, and then we could see, but we're not gonna get support from the capital program committee. Finance committee is very difficult to convince to vary and support or go against the capital program committee. And so, you know, how that's gonna happen, I don't know, but it's a factor in both construction costs in general, I think, and then the municipal factor will add $1.5 million. I mean, or 1.2, right, for like an OPM sort of a thing, or all these other administrative costs that you don't have, frankly, on a purchase. But it's hard to believe that it's less expensive to purchase on including property than it is to build on property.
Yeah, we
that you
just
don't
did it, right?
have. Well,
It's crazy.
so anyway, I think more to come on that, but we're gonna have to.
Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? So who comes up with the $6 million number? Where does that come from? I mean, how did we even,
That.
where's the plans that generated $6 million? I'm kind of curious about that.
So I received this from CHA. I'll forward it to you, and it gives a cost analysis breakdown of the estimated value.
But these folks, like, are these the guys that are working on the dorm with us now? They're the ones that come up
Correct.
with this
There are
number?
OPM that are currently doing our
So-
project.
I think we talked about this a little bit. I apologize to bring this in right now, but I think it's appropriate in that. The reason, anybody can build this house for us. Doesn't have to be one of these big fancy companies from away that, you know, has all these certifications. You just have to be DCAM certified, right? And I don't know what that process takes.
Well, they have to win the bid.
Understood,
Yeah.
but the first thing is you have to be DCAM certified to even bid, right?
That's
Correct? So I just feel like we as a board, we as a commission should be trying to encourage some people that are in our community that are builders that could help us to accomplish this by helping, educating them how to get DCAM certified. I mean, you know, a bunch of guys out there that are doing this kind of work. I know a few. I'm curious, like, how hard it is to be DCAM certified.
Yeah, I had a friend who was a GC that did some of the work and even did some of the work some years ago at the airport. And there's a lot of additional red tape that they have to maintain the compliance. And when there's a surplus of residential work and a high end of the work that they can get that doesn't have that same level of bureaucracy to it, the only way that it becomes appealing is at the higher wage rate, right? It's like self-defeating. So I appreciate the effort. I just don't know, like, it's got to work itself out. What's got to happen is that the residential market, construction market needs to dry up. So, you know, so that they will, you know, the water will seek its own level. And then they would be incentivized to seek out this municipal work, or, you know, I don't know how we're really gonna influence that. And then we could tell, I mean, they know about it, you know, I think,
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I was in that business a little bit.
Yeah,
I
like I
wasn't
say,
like
it
a
is.
big contractor, but I mean,
you know, and people
I mean,
don't
is
want to
it-
deal prevailing wage, you know, all the records that go along with
Yeah.
that, right? First, you could just go build a, you know, house on the cliff and
yeah,
not have to
I
do
hear you
all,
saying,
not
I
have to
just,
do all that, right? And
just drives me crazy that we have,
I
as a
know.
municipality,
Well,
we have to
but
pay
back
twice
to
what you
your
would pay
point,
otherwise.
right? What I am hoping is that, you know, or was, you know, looking to see is it possible for us to continue on a design basis to get, we know what we want, right? So can we just get an actual design done of this you know, whether it's modular, it doesn't need, you know, bells and whistles, straightforward rectangle townhouse, and then price that. As opposed to estimating, I don't know what they're saying, that's to your point, right?
Yeah, can't we just go to like the three guys that we know that bring modular homes over here and say, hey, what's your plan for a 3 townhouse thing? And solicit from them their plan,
Well,
and they do all that work, right? They do everything for you.
I think part of the problem is they may not get the project because it's gonna go out to bid, so you've gotta, and you know, a lot of times when you're doing that on a private basis, you've got a relationship where they're, you know, they're gonna do that because they're, you know, got a more than reasonable chance of getting your business. In a public setting, we don't know that's gonna work out that way. And the risk that we continue to run is that we could put any number we want on this. And if the bids come out in excess of our authorization, the project doesn't move forward. We were trying to explain that to the Capcom that, you know, we were shooting high purposely, because if you're 1 cent over, if the bid is 1 cent over the appropriation, you're going back again, versus if you have extra. But that gets balanced where a contractor knows the appropriation, and, you know, like, where is that sort of sweet spot that you don't just put too much on there? And it's hard.
And we're not allowed to do these projects, right? No, I'm just asking.
No, I mean, you know.
I mean, as the airport, you can't just take this project on.
No, it's it's public procurement, it's chapter 30B, you know, it's no different than.
No, I mean, the OPM part.
No, it's required under the funding over a certain threshold.
Correct.
Like, you might be able to do that if you were building a shed, you know, something. What's the threshold that you looked at?
I think over 100,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so 100,000, you know.
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
It
no,
just
that-
frustrates the heck out of me because I know we're just paying
We
like
could.
double what we should be paying for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
We need the housing and it's
Right.
crazy to me.
And I think and I didn't mean for this to take a whole thing, but it is on our agenda as a capital, like, what do we do here for us to kind of decide, and I don't want to just go through the same exact, process that we did last year where we really tried. I mean, Noah put a lot of time into, and everybody, so I didn't just put on him. I know all of you are supporting him and, providing them with spreadsheets of, and they wanted comparisons of other town projects, housing projects for bedroom cost. And, I just don't think we get there. I don't want to totally give up, but unless we could really go to a bare bones and then try to figure out how we might be able to come up with something that, is only a marginal or reasonably bit more than what you might buy something for. It does get you brand new and it's on your property, right? There's a piece of that I would much rather see us personally have that, but you have to be fiscally responsible, and that's where they're coming from. So I don't know. Let's see what we can do to, I'd like to know what plan that's, here's Mark's point spot on.
Yep.
What was their basis? Are they just using straight scale or not square footage comparison numbers and saying, at 1,000 square feet on the dorm, it was this, and then we're projecting 750. So it's it's 75% of that, or is there an actual, did we come up with something? And that's your point. I think we could grab any set of plans. That is
right
just
on
a
mine.
straight cookie cutter
Easily you can look them
duplex and say,
So we're just looking for a duplex, that's,
I mean, it's up to us, but I mean, I'm not looking, my suggestion is there is, there's no dormer, there's no, it's a rectangle
and I was
with a
just
door
curious.
on the left and a door on the right.
And 3 bedrooms aside, is that what the objective is there?
I think that's the right number. I mean, anybody could just, it's up to us, but again,
No, I'm just asking.
No,
like,
yeah,
generally
that's completely up to
kind
us.
of go and look at that on my own, like, I'm just so curious now because, but I know I did my duplex for.
yeah,
And how the fractionality of the costs, it was like,
but everything. I stopped.
I still had to pay for everything.
I know.
I do know them.
But Phil, to your point, we just built a building with 9 bedrooms for the same cost. I mean, this is 3 bedrooms less. And so, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the same cost.
Three.
I think we
Yeah,
need to grab a
it's-
set of
yeah,
plans, like you're saying.
2/3 of the plumbing, right? versus-
And-
for
But I'm afraid they're
Correct.
doing.
And the wiring and everything
Correct.
else.
And I would think a duplex, it doesn't need fire suppression. It doesn't need,
No.
600 amp services. And,
Well, maybe with the new code, but yeah, I never said anything.
all right, let's see what we can do. I need for that to take a total turn, but I think that and it's on the CIP, I think that one in saying that we've got a blank placeholder for replacement of the Thompson house.
Yeah.
What we put in on those, and of course, and then that gets us to 2020. You want to just keep going? Or you
Yeah,
gonna?
I'm just going through 27. I'm not going to 28 or 29.
Okay,
27, the ASMP ones, these are vehicles that we need to upgrade. For example, the utility truck is a 98 F250. I want to say that. It's old. Yeah. The Airport 10 is a 2006 Ranger. We call it the Danger Ranger because the thing stalls on the runway. So these are eligible for the state fund. So again, as we had mentioned before, most likely going to be electric because that's what the state is saying if we're able to be approved by them. So I want to go through those quick. The other ones left on here are the forklift, as well as the Bunker Road rehab and seasonal tent, and the associated costs there. The last two, though, we're still kind of in planning phase. I was able to go out and look at Bunker Road with Rich Lasden from McFarland Johnson to get a better understanding of what needs to be done to better the drainage out there. We're scheming ideas. I personally don't see a whole lot of work that really needs to be done out there in large dollar signs. Honestly, I think just a couple of culverts to just better drainage would suit. Plus, cleaning the drains really is the main culprit. They just need to be cleaned out. That's easy to do.
The one in front of my lot just needs the filter fabric replaced.
Correct.
The drain's fine.
Drain's
Just need to
fine.
pull the grate out.
Correct.
The new
Correct.
thing in there to prevent it from getting fouled.
Resolve so much. So yeah, so more to come with those two. Seasonal 10, of course, would speak for itself. If we went through terminal optimization, of course, that would resolve a lot there. So those are just question marks that we still have to add funding for, but that's the list for FY 27. Any questions? That's a lot.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, moving on then down to the manager's report. Yeah, so AIP projects, currently, continued environmental monitoring. We met with Brett Trowbridge, VHB, for formal introductions, and we also introduced our new environmental coordinator, which I'll introduce here at the end of my report. We're looking to schedule our annual TAC meeting this coming September and October with our environmental monitoring crew. Runway center line 624, the mill and overlay was completed last month, 4,000 by 4 feet. 30 days ago. The new grooving is happening right now. Honestly, the grooving machine is not as loud as people were saying it to be, which is a good win. However, the airport did ask for a waiver to the noise, the town noise ordinance, which was granted to us, just to ensure that, you know, we're being respectful to those residents that have butt up against the airport. And correspondence was provided by me to those residents, and the response was very supportive and understanding, which was great to hear. Any questions on the AIP? Thanks. Moving on, non-AIP, the fence relocation South Shore. We are working with McFarland Johnson to meet with Mass DOT and FAA regarding a modification to standard for that relocation of the fence. I spoke with Rob Holdgate, our security coordinator today. He's saying that the fence is roughly about 1.5 feet and falling into the ocean. And we are basically begging the FAA to approve this modification of standard so that they will move the fence so it doesn't just fall into the ocean. A lot of pushback from the FAA on that, which is we're not understanding why, as it is a safety thing and it keeps people out of the airfield. We are meeting with them tomorrow, I want to say, is what is it Brian from MJ said. I think we're going to schedule for that for tomorrow. If we get the approval from the FAA, MassDOT will pay for this project entirely, but we have until June 30th. So we are definitely cutting it on the line right now. It's getting close. So hence why the urgency to have this meeting. The refueling wall repair was completed. The steel beams look fantastic and everything looks good. So we're pleased with the work that was done there. No update to the electric aircraft charging stations. The noise wall, the pre-bid meeting was highly attended with multiple companies in attendance, and the deadline for the bids was extended to this coming Friday, May 16th. So more on that in the future. The ARF transition plan, the output discharge test was completed and passed the regulations. And Villy has been working stalwart to get that vehicle registered through the town right now. And then we can be able to add that vehicle to our airport certification manual. And no new terminal, what do you call TAs? What does it stand for? Terminal, the TAA?
Tenant alteration.
Tenant alteration. Thank you. I was trying to remember, not to tenant, no tenant alteration request that this since the last board meeting. So, any questions on non-AIP?
Aircraft charging station.
Yes, so there's been talk to get aircraft charging stations as there's this huge push for electric aircraft. And there is a company,
It's Beta Technology.
Beta Technology.
Oh.
Do you want, you probably know a little bit better than I do.
Sorry, I was just looking at everyone else out there.
Cameron maybe will be able to.
Beta Technologies. They were going to install, or hopefully are still going to install a charging cube for their aircraft in front of the flat roof building where the old FBO was. They came out, did a lot of utility locating. I think they were in talks with National Grid and local planning boards and all that, trying to push this forward. The last thing I know, they ran into some funding issues and the project just been on hold. I don't know if Cameron has anything else to add to that.
I would just mention that we went through the approval process of a contract with Beta last year. So this has been a long process. Just as a reminder for the commission, Beta Technologies is the team out of Burlington, Vermont, and they have been establishing a network of airports to install electric chargers for their CTOL and VTOL aircraft, which are very fascinating. I've been following them for a few years now to look at their vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. I am not sure about the funding of the project, but this has been over a year now of work and culmination. But beyond the history and the funding, I'm not sure what is going on with them right now.
Thank you.
How many commercial electric airplanes are out there right now?
Well, I do know that in New York City, they just approved for the air taxis of those, so that should be beginning here in the near future. But it's just there's just a big push for these. They call them eVTOLs or electric vehicle takeoff and landing. They're basically like a drone that seats people inside them. They're all electric, and yeah, you're going to start seeing these things popping
Okay,
up.
it's ridiculous. I think the whole thing is ridiculous. I rest my case on that. The whole project should be just canned. That's my private view.
All right. Any other comments? Questions? All right. Cool. All right. RFB bid status 33 Bunker Road. The RFP committee is meeting tomorrow for the final evaluation and decision. Who's going to get that spot? We had five good solid companies that bid on that. As it is public, you're more than welcome to join and watch us. So, request for expression of interest for the flat top roof building of the old Blade building. We had conducted a site visit just last week. 2 interested parties attended that. The RFI closes tomorrow on the 14th with the decision to be made by next week. So we're looking really good to get somebody in there and to rent that space out. The final RFP that we have is for IT services. The airport IT service contract is coming due at the end of July, and an RFP was just issued yesterday and will close May 30th. Moving on, operations update, fuel. We're looking to increase our cost 100 low lead tomorrow, $6.98 to keep up with regional pricing. We're looking to bump it up again come Memorial Day as we traditionally have. And then, of course, we already spoke about the fuel revolver cap. Go into that. The runway 1533 reels or 1533 reels project, the control unit boxes still require installation. That is an FAA project, so it's really on their timetable to finish installing those. Tomorrow, airline service begins with JetBlue. Here comes the season, so get ready.
Thursday.
Yes, Thursday. I'm sorry, Thursday, 15th. I was thinking it's 14th. I apologize. Thursday. And Leo services have already begun for the season. They started last week, Thursday. So they're doing a great job. I was able to go out there and introduce myself and get to know our Leo officers that'll be handling us this summer. No training updates. There is an annual fire burn scheduled for tomorrow. How many staff are attending that, Preston?
At least 5.
At least 5. Okay. So they're going to be doing their ARF training. The FAA inspection, of course, is still on for Memorial Day week. The TSA inspection is slated for the 19th, I do believe, just due to the change in administration and just the cutting of cost. A lot of these inspectors are pretty much not allowed to do as much travel as they used to. And so there's been a big challenge of when we can get our inspectors to come out. It's really now only on a necessary requirement for them to travel. And so we have been anxiously waiting to know when this TNC inspection will happen. But now that we know that it's going to happen here, I think within the next week, if I'm correct, from what Rob Hogan said, I want to say it's the 19th. And then, of course, our RSAT meeting is scheduled for June 10th with the tower and those associated pilots who are interested. And that's the runway safety action training meeting that is required by the FAA every year. It basically goes over our vehicle pedestrian deviations that do happen on the airfield. If they happen, knock on wood, I don't think we've had any this year, and we didn't have any last year, which is great. I mean, that's what the FAA wants to see. It basically shows that we're being safety conscious here on the airport and that people aren't being stupid. So, for lack of a better term. We did receive our new airport fueling truck that replaced the old one that was giving us trouble. So we're able to refuel our new our airport vehicles now. The airport tenant meeting was successful that we had conducted last month. Tenant inspections were conducted by Preston and I, as well as with Elizabeth. There were 3 tenant violations due to just loose garbage and some loose oil canisters that were, I think, empty. They're just kind of laying around. But all the tenants were notified, and follow-up showed that they have all complied and that they're all now in compliance with the airport, which is great. And then seasonal positions, I do believe all of our seasonal positions have been filled, and the majority of them have already started work. So we're rocking and rolling there. So any questions on operations? All right. Statistical report, we can move on that. You should have received that as part of the packet. I'll just briefly go over those. Operations are up 4% for March and up 5% for year to date. Southwest ramp operations are up 3% or 354 for the month of March. Enplanements were down 7% for March, but are still up 10% year to date. Cape Air is 5% from Boston. From EWB is down 5% from Boston, down 16% from EWB, 18% up from Hyannis, and 26% up from Martha's Vineyard. Fuel, Jet A fuel is up 4.7% year to date. Also, it's up 16.5% over the 3-month average and up 31.2% the previous month. 100 low lead is up 7.8% year to date, down 12.4 over the previous 3 months and down 8% from the previous 3 months and down 8% just this last month. Freight is down 18% for March and 14% year to date. And on all freight entities, Cape Air, USPS, FedEx, and UPS are all down. Noise, 0 calls of noise complaints for this last month, but there were 4 APU events that were reported, and the airport operations issued 4 initial warnings to the pilot in command. And following that warning, the pilots complied with the APU limitations. Personnel report, we have hired a new environmental coordinator. I do want to introduce you to her, Madison Collins. She is on.
Welcome.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Everyone, nice to meet you too. Yeah, I'm the new environmental coordinator, and a little bit about me is I just came from the Environmental Protection Agency where I was working with them for about a little over a half a year. And before that, I went to Tufts University for my master's in environmental policy and planning. And then before that, I was at Skidmore College for my bachelor's in environmental studies and biology. So yeah, if you ever have questions for me going forward, I would be happy to keep learning and get up to speed with this job so I can, really contribute to all the projects and all the operations at the airport.
Welcome. Thank you. Any more questions? Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Madison. Yeah, and then of course we had already introduced Miss Megan Perry in our last meeting, but she wanted to come and see how these come here, so I just wanted to.
Was it as good as you thought, or?
Pretty exciting.
I'm a fan of town meeting.
There you go.
This is great.
All right, you're all right.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy you're here.
And with that, that's all I have for manager's report. Any questions?
Okay. Commissioner's comments. Ms. Topham, anything?
Yes.
I just had one, which I would like to work on a further work on the ramp management policy and to bring back to the commission. I've discussed it with Mr. Smith a little bit. And so really having to do with the direction the jets are parked on the ramp. The airport, probably more than a decade ago, had established that we wouldn't be, engines pointed to the west. There seems to be some recurring pressure from certain operators that's the way they want to park. And I feel like a policy from the commission could help support the administration in, forward, moving that towards. And I would like to just put a draft together, work with staff and then legal to make sure that there are, safety always comes first, no doubt about it. But, in terms of emissions and folks that are standing right there at that fence, in our noise monitor. So I think that a policy might be warranted. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and make sure there's no concern. It would just be a draft. I'm not sure it would be a 1 meeting kind of thing, get it to you guys, to everybody to look at, comment, and then work through to see, how that could help. So that my thinking in general is that the good working folks at the airport and the boots on the ground have aren't in perhaps a contentious or conflict situation with an operator. They can say, actually, this is, here on page 74 of the manual, it says, if you, be a little facetious, but to try to provide that support. So I think it would be helpful. And,
I would agree, just to point one small thing out,
yeah,
just some aircraft are required to be facing into the wind to start.
right, yeah.
Some, not all, some,
I
like
think-
mine in particular,
Yeah.
you have to face it into the wind to start, otherwise it won't start.
Yeah, I think that's why it would be an iterative process on the policy to get input from operations and staff and to, I think there always has to be allowable exceptions, so that the person in charge, at operations has discretion to be able to do that. And my thinking on that is simply that there's a log that's reviewable of any exceptions that are granted to a policy that creates that level of sort of accountability, but that certainly there's going to be times that it has to happen for either aircraft requirements, certain wind speeds, what are those thresholds? And then, but in your general, like a very low wind day, and you've got someone that just takes, well, corporate says this is what we, it's just easier. So anyway, that's kind of what I was thinking about, but I understand there certainly needs to be discretion and exceptions that make sure that the safety and no rights are violated or taken away. At the same time, parking at Nantucket Memorial Airport is a privilege. That has, I think that gets.
I honestly already thought it was a policy.
Yeah, I'm not
think
sure,
it
I'm
would-
not sure it isn't, because, back. It was very much touted environmental permitting as something that had been done. As a change that was made, because it used to be, but that was before we got into the fleet mix maybe that we have now. They've really stepped, it's so, I think a little bit more to come on that, but I wanted to mention it to the whole commission and, it's something I'd like to work on a little bit further. That was all I had. Is there anything else? Any do any public join us? Any
We don't.
comments? Okay. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session per general law, chapter 38, section 21A, and review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda. For review of possible release and to discuss strategy with respect to legal claims against manufacturer of PFAS, other sources, potential sources of PFAS, where the chair is determined that open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission, not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
So
Is there a second? Ms. Stoffel, how do you vote? Ms. Blandler?
Aye.
Mr. Mascaron?
I,
Ms. Marks?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, President. Have a good night.